Hello, how are you doing? It's time for a new Quiet as Mouse book club video today, but we're doing something a little different because it's not a book review. It contains some book reviews, but it is not in itself a book review. It's more of a sort of reading vlog thing. The Quiet as Mouse book club has been running off and on since 2014, so I figured, a little change. I am making this video today because I am excited about reading again, and I want to talk about it. So in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about my reading journey, how I got to this point, and I've also read a lot of books in the last month and a bit, and I want to give a little roundup of them, so that's going to be in this video as well. So let's get to it. If you watched my last book club video, which was a review of Welcome to the Hyeonamdong Bookshop, and some of my other videos over the years, you'll know already that I have struggled a bit with reading for the last 8 years or so, so I want to give a little summary of my relationship with books and reading up to this point. We are going to split it into eras, starting with the child mouse era. That's right, we're going back pretty far. When I was a child, back in the 1900s, wasn't a big reader. I read super slowly, didn't super enjoy it. One day, something clicked and I suddenly became an avid reader. I read constantly. Don't know what happened. It was the same with writing. I would read library books mainly, just reading anything really, anything I could get my hands on. My favourite book of that time, we're thinking maybe 10 or 11, was Harry's Mad by Dick King-Smith. I specifically remember that this was the only Dick King-Smith book that I liked, but it was about like a boy with a talking parrot. Now let's go to the teen mouse era. 12 to 18, let's say. I was still reading a lot, mainly from the library, but the books were getting longer, so fewer books, and I was getting more discernment in my reading tastes. I'm not sure how much discernment a 12-year-old has, but I was getting to know what I liked, and was starting to read books that I thought I would enjoy as opposed to just like anything that existed in the world. And I was reading more series as well, not in publication order, not in any order, just whenever they were in the library I'd get them. And my favourite series were The Babysitter's Club by Anne M. Martin, The Cafe Club by Anne Bryant. The Cafe Club is like a British version of the Babysitter's Club, where instead of working as babysitters, they're working in a cafe. Animorphs by K.A. Applegate, probably my first real foray into the science fiction and fantasy genre. And also Goosebumps by R.L. Stine and Spooksville by Christopher Pike. Maybe by 15 or 16 I wasn't reading these books so much anymore, but when I think about that time in my reading, I think about these series. And I've also got my favourite books from that time to show you. So for maybe the early teens, I have My Friend's a Werewolf by Pete Johnson. So I remember really loving that, and then a bit later on, my favourite book was Last Act by Christopher Pike, which was, from what I remember, a murder mystery set at a school play. Something that surprised me from delving down memory lane to make this video is I kind of liked sort of spooky books when I was a kid. Nowadays I sort of feel like I don't read anything in that genre at all, so I think at some point I've just kind of forgotten that I liked it. I mean, obviously the sort of horror you're getting as a 11 to 15-year-old or something is going to be pretty tame, but still. And also in the teen mouse era, let's say the latter half of the teen mouse era, I would do something that is relevant for later in the video, which is I would read 2 books at the same time. I would read like a smaller book that I would take to school, and then I'd read a bigger book which would stay at home. And one of those bigger books was The Lord of the Rings. This copy of The Lord of the Rings. This is one of the things I remember reading for quite a long time in the teen mouse era. Now let's move on to the young adult mouse era. And this isn't young adult in the book sense, it's, young adult in the aging sense. So I'm talking the years from going to uni at 18 to about 27-ish. So in this era, I read less, but I still read. I stopped going to the library, but I started getting books from charity shops. So I started owning more books. Started reading more classics, had a big Jane Austen phase. This is my copy of the complete works of Jane Austen that I got when I was at uni. It was the tie-in for the film. And then also in this era is when I read the Discworld series for the first time. And then after that, 2014 onwards, every book that I have read has been documented on this YouTube channel in the Quiet as Mouse book club. So let's call this the YouTuber mouse era. So I guess in summary for the YouTuber mouse era, from 2014 to 2016, I reviewed a book on this channel every fortnight. I alternated between classic and modern books mainly, and I was pretty consistent. In late 2016, I started burning out a bit. Wasn't reading as much. The videos got more sporadic. I missed reading, so in 2019, I started Discworld Discourses on my YouTube channel, where I reread the entire Discworld series, one book every fortnight, and talked about it on here. That lasted until the end of 2020, and then I burnt out again. Didn't read or review another book until 2023, and then didn't read a single book in 2024. Kind of, because in 2024 I took up running, and I listen to audiobooks when I run. With Spotify Premium, you can listen to 12 hours of audiobooks a month included, and I run 3 times a week for 30 to 50 minutes, so it fits. So since April 2024, I have been reading the Bridgerton series of books in audiobook form. As of today, I'm about 20% of the way through When He Was Wicked, which is the 6th book in the series. But I feel like listening to these audiobooks has helped get me sort of back into a reading mindset, because in January 2025, I rejoined the library. And now in the library, unlike back in my day, you can get ebooks and audiobooks from the library through the Libby app. So I have started doing that. I've started reading ebooks. I've never read ebooks before, really. It's been very exciting. And because of that, I got an e-reader. I got the Kobo Libra colour. It looks like this. I chose the Kobo because that's the one in the UK that allows you to read ebooks from the Libby app on your e-reader. I also like the buttons to turn the pages. It's in colour, which I like. You can transfer PDFs and stuff using Google Drive. You can also listen to audiobooks if you want. You can get a pen to write notes, but I'm not a note taker when I'm reading, so I have not done that. But I really like the convenience. You know, I'm able to slot in a couple of pages of a book when I'm eating or have a few minutes free. I've started reading before bed, and it's really helping me to fit reading back into my life. And another thing that's happened is I've gone back to reading 2 books concurrently, like in the Teen Mouse era. I mean, 3 really, including the audiobooks. Now, the small book is an ebook, and the large book is a physical book. And I've been reading a lot, mainly library books. So for the rest of this video, I want to talk about the books that I have been reading since the 14th of January 2025, the day I got back into reading. Since then I have read 9 books, and I'm currently reading 2 more. I don't think I've read so many books so quickly since the Teen Mouse days. And almost all of the books I've been reading are Romantasy. The last time I was a reader, Romantasy didn't exist. I mean, obviously, you know, fantasy books that involved romance, where romance was quite a, you know, large part of the plot, existed, but, you know, the word romantasy wasn't a thing. So it feels like I just have a whole subgenre of books ready and waiting for me to explore. Fantasy is my favourite genre of fiction, I think. Romance isn't. I mean, I've read a bunch of romance books over the years. I don't mind the genre, I don't avoid it, but I tend to prefer romance in books when it's not, you know, like the main or the only thing. So I was worried I'd find Romantasy a bit much, but so far I am really enjoying the subgenre. If I do sometimes get a little frustrated with all the relationship drama, couple of pages later, you know, there's dragons. So if you are trying to get back into reading after a break like me, or you're trying to get into reading for the first time and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by every book that exists in the world to choose from, I'd recommend sort of picking a specific genre or subgenre and just choosing from within that, because I definitely think it's helped me with not getting, you know, overwhelmed. Oh, and I'd also recommend an app called Storygraph, which helps also with the not getting overwhelmed thing. Basically, you can just put the books that you're reading in it and track your progress, and also like put books you want to read in the future. So I've been finding that very helpful, because I've really gone from 0 to 100 with the reading. So anyway, after this little 3-hour introduction, let's talk about the books I've read. I guess it's sort of my February reading roundup with a little bit of January. So for my large at-home book, I've been reading The Fourth Wing from the 2nd to the 9th of February. And then I started Iron Flame on the 15th, I think. And I think I'll finish it today, so by the time this video is out I will have finished it, and then I'm going to read Onyx Storm. I've been doing this as a buddy read, so shout out to Carolyn who's been reading it with me. It follows Violet, who has to join a war college to become a dragon rider, and then in the first book, Fourth Wing, the book's mainly concerned with her just trying to survive that. There's a target on her back for various reasons. But then as the book progresses and then we move into book 2, the war outside starts to encroach more on Violet and her friends. And then there's this guy called Xaden, and they're kind of enemies and he wants to kill her. But he doesn't really, he wants to do other things. I'm really enjoying the series. I think it's a great first Romantasy. I feel like I have lucked out with this being the first Romantasy book that I have picked up. You know, the whole Violet and Xaden relationship is instrumental to the plot, but there are also a lot of other things going on. You know, for someone like me who's used to their fantasy books having fewer sex scenes. Really enjoy the world building. There are some great and important friend and family relationships too. And you know, there's a war on, and there's a lot of peril, and dragons. I feel like I need to do ratings because I have done for every book that I've reviewed in the past on my channel. So I'd give Fourth Wing like 4.5 out of 5. At the moment I'd say Iron Flame is sitting at about a 4.1 out of 5 for me, but it might go up a bit as I reach the end. There were a few frustrating elements in the first half of Iron Flame for me, but they've mainly been resolved in the second half of Iron Flame, which is quite satisfying. And as I head towards the end of Iron Flame, I'm enjoying it a lot more, so I'll be interested to see if it sort of overtakes Fourth Wing once I finish the book. I will report back. And then moving on to ebooks. Firstly, welcome to the Hyunamdong Bookshop, which I've already reviewed on this channel, so I'm not going to do that again. After that, I read 5 Broken Blades by May Corland. This book follows 6 people who team up to kill a king, and they all have different motivations, and they come in pairs, so there's sort of 3 couples within the 6 characters. I kind of devoured this book. It was kind of a very quick, easy read for me. It's in the present tense. I haven't read many books in the present tense, but it really helped with the reading experience. Every chapter ends on some kind of cliffhanger, which is fine for a while, but then after about a third of the way through it gets kind of a bit grating because some of the cliffhangers seem to be just very shoehorned in there for no reason. The world building isn't super deep, it's quite surface level. I wanted to know a bit more. There's also some just like unnecessary misogyny in there which doesn't really do anything for the plot or the characters, so it's just in there for sort of no reason, which does get a little grating too. The chapters alternate between the 6 main characters. Each of the characters has a different voice, which is kind of fun when you're reading, you know, but a couple of the voices are less subtle than the other 4, so when you get to their chapters it's a bit of a shock. Oh, and I want to talk about this. So we have 3 relationships going on in this book. So we have one relationship which is pre-existing. They were a couple before the start of the book, and we meet them and they're a couple still. We have one which is a more enemies to lovers kind of deal. They've known each other for a long time, but they were enemies, and then we meet them as enemies, and then their relationship changes over the course of the book. And then the other couple meet at the start of the book. We see their first meeting, and then it's kind of an insta-love kind of deal. So normally with romances in fiction, my least favourite is the type where the romance predates the story, where the reader or the audience joins them after they're already a couple, and then after that it's a romance relationship where they know each other beforehand, but they're not like a couple, and then you sort of see their relationship change over the course of the book. And then my favourite sort of romance in a book is the type where, you know, you see their first meeting and then you see the relationship over the course of the book. All of which is to say that in 5 Broken Blades, it's the exact opposite for me. My favourite relationship by far is the one that existed before we did. But anyway, I enjoyed this book. It has some issues, but I really enjoyed reading it. I have immediately put the sequel, For Ruined Realms, on hold to get it from the library, and I would give it 3.9 out of 5. Now Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. This isn't really a romantasy. I mean, I guess it's got romance in it, but it's more of a sort of fantasy mystery. There's a ship with 12 people on, and they start being killed off one by one, and our main character D is trying to find out who's doing all the killing. I loved this book so much. It was right up my street. I loved D, loved his sense of humour, diverse, interesting cast of characters, good length book, easy to read, broad brushstrokes with the world building, but it worked for the book. There was only one thing in the book that I wasn't a fan of, and I'm not going to go into spoilers, but there was a really nice relationship which grew over the course of the book, and there was a twist near the end that set that back. See also my preference for relationships which start during the book as opposed to relationships which predate the book. But even with that, this was my favourite book that I read this month. I read it from the library, like I got it from the library, but after I finished reading it, I bought it on Kobo so that I just have it forever. Now I can read it whenever I want, and I'll give it 4.6 out of 5. Now, Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. Not a romantasy, not a fantasy at all. This is a modern day family drama about a Korean-American family, and the dad goes missing and they try to figure out what happened to him. It took me a while to get into this book. I did not warm to the main character Mia at all, really, but I was glad that I kept going to the end because it was a really good book, and I'll give it 3.4 out of 5. I read 2 books of the Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout this month. From Blood and Ash is the first one, and then the second one is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. This is a vampire and werewolf book, although the main character, Poppy, is not aware that she is in a vampire and werewolf book for most of the first book. It's probably my least favourite of the romantasy books that I've read so far, in this really long time that I've been reading the genre. I do find the main character a little bit annoying, and not a lot happens, and it can happen quite slowly, and it's quite predictable as well. But I am happy to have read it, and I am going to continue reading it for now. It was still a super quick, easy read. Sort of like a junk food type book, a guilty pleasure type book. That's sort of my relationship to it, and I'd give both of the books in the series I've read so far 3.5 out of 5. I also started the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black this month with The Cruel Prince, the first book in the series. This is a fae book about the High Court of Fairy. I was worried about this book because I'm not a big fae realm person. It's kind of my least favourite fantasy world and my least favourite fantasy race. Fairies are inhuman, obviously, but their motivations and actions are often really obscure and not relatable. So I just always struggle with stories that involve them heavily. But this book is also really interesting to me because it's also the only book I've read of the romantasy genre so far that's kind of set in our world. The main character and her sister are from here, and they were taken to the Fae realm as children and have had to survive as mortals there. So I found that very fun, and there was also quite a, satisfying and complicated plot, which I enjoyed. As predicted, I didn't really warm to any of the Fae characters. They're generally, including the male lead, pretty abusive and cruel to our main character, but there is a bit more development for the male lead towards the end, which does help. And I think there's potential for me to maybe get on well with the series after all. So I'm looking forward to continuing reading it. And I'll give that one, The Cruel Prince, 3.9 out of 5. Next, Quicksilver by Stephanie Spinner. Not to be confused with the popular romantasy book of the same name by Callie Hart. So when I went to look for the Callie Hart Quicksilver in my library, it wasn't there. But this other Quicksilver was, and it's a book about Hermes and Greek mythology. And I had an absolute obsession with Mercury or Hermes when I was younger. So I got this book out instead and I really enjoyed it. Definitely a young adult book, very easy to read. I read it in 3 days. Excellent if you want some Greek myths. I will give Quicksilver by Stephanie Spinner 3.8 out of 5. And finally, that's right, we are kind of reaching the end of the video. Faebound by Saara El-Arifi. I bought the second book in the series, Cursebound, in Waterstones on a whim because it was beautiful and it was signed. So I got the first book out of the library so I could read it first. I'm only 37% of the way through this book, so bear that in mind. As you may be able to tell from the title, it's another fae book. There are 2 sisters who are elves and they end up stuck in the fae realm with another bloke. The first few chapters, maybe 1 to 5, I loved them. I loved the world building. Since then, I haven't been as enamoured with it. The author does a little bit of telling as opposed to showing, and I feel like there's a little bit too much hand-holding the reader, but it is a nice, easy read, and I am enjoying reading it. Where I am in the moment, I'd give it about 3.7 out of 5. Also, this is, I think, one of only 2 books I have read that have been in the third person. Is that a Romantasy thing? Are like Romantasy books in general in first person? Because I feel like I have read more first person books this month than I have in the last 10 years. I mean, I feel like romance as a genre has a lot of first person books, so it's maybe not that surprising. So yeah, is it just the books that I have happened to read first, or is like 90-95% of Romantasy in the first person? So those are all the books that I've read. And some little teeny tiny reviews of them. Next, I'm going to finish Iron Flame and read Onyx Storm, and obviously finish Faebound and start Cursebound. Coming up from the library, I have the next books in the Blood and Ash series and the Cruel Prince series, and also 4 Ruined Realms. And then the other books I have on hold from the library are Powerless by Lauren Roberts and Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. Of books that I own, I'm hoping to get into Sarah J. Maas books, so I've got Throne of Glass, Crescent City, and A Court of Thorns and Roses. And then I also bought a few books on sale, which are also in my to-be-read list. A Letter to the Luminous Deep by Sylvie Catherall, Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden, The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon, and Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. So those are the books that I may read next, or I may read other books. While I feel like reading, I'm going to make the most of it. So thank you very, very much for watching this video. I know it was a long one. I'd love to know what you think about any of the books I've talked about today. And if you have knowledge of the Romantasy subgenre, do you have any recommendations for me to read? I'm going in pretty blind. So if you have books that you particularly like, or you have recommendations based on, you know, what I've said in this video, please do let me know. I would love your recommendations. I hope you have a fantastic week. I don't know when my next Quiet as Mouse book club video will be. I'm reading too many books at the minute to review them all in a normal way, which is a nice problem to have. So I might have to do some sort of bulk reviews like this. Some sort of reading roundup kind of vibe. We're not going to have any set structure. I'm just going to see how it goes. But let me know if there's anything in particular you want from Quiet as Mouse book club videos in future. But anyway, I'm going to let you go finally. Thank you again for watching, and let's move across to the end screen. If you'd like to see my latest video or some more book club videos, then you can do that below me here. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel or visit my website, then you can do that beside me here. There's also a link to my Patreon page in the description below if you fancy it. Take care, stay safe and well, and I will see you soon.